switch over.
And what about the recording of results for Sporty HQ?
Had a really good meeting today with the revSPORT team and their integration with squash levels. So essentially the rankings will be all managed through squash levels and fully integrated with revSPORT. So, you go to a tournament scores and results are entered, it automatically feeds into your squash levels account, and your ratings and rankings are updated within probably 12 to 24 hours is the turnaround. So essentially, we sort of said 24 hours is probably the most realistic, but understanding that, you play a pennants match at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday night, and you want to be able to check it on the Wednesday morning and see that it's been updated. So we're just going to see if that's feasible or not. I think Sporty HQ is somewhere between 24 and 36 hours. We're going to be ahead of that anyway. So
when will Sporty HQ actually, the recording of results on Sporty HQ, when will that cease? Again, mid-year?
Yeah, about mid-year. So we should be launching the competitions module around about the end of March, start of April. So essentially, if you haven't got any competitions up and running by that point, we'll be looking to try and get people running their competitions through revSPORT at that time. If you've got competitions that are up and running now and they're going to run right through until July or August or whatever that might be, you'll still be able to use Sporty HQ. We're not going to pull the rug out from anybody's legs.
Okay. What I was leading to was that we have Sean from Penguin, we've got Kent from Kingborough, Gary from the Masters Association, and myself from Devonport.
Shane from Penguin.
Shane, sorry. Sorry, mate.
Can't see you, Shane. Yes,
aren't we lucky? And we're missing Ulverston, and we're missing Wynyard.
This is what you get with me. You can't quite see me because we can't.
I can now. So we're missing two clubs.
Yep.
And
Andrew Woodhouse.
And Corey from Deloraine, he couldn't make it neither, and he was up in Alana could, but obviously she's tied up with schoolwork. So what I'm leaning into is that if these clubs that aren't here tonight, or either one of us here tonight that have further questions that we need clarification on, am I able to suggest that they contact you?
Yeah, absolutely.
At some stage.
Yeah, and Leon, we chat plenty of times. You've got no problems in picking up the phone and giving me a call when you've got a question, and I've got no problem answering the calls. So my job here is, in project managing this transition, is to be that point of contact. So if there's any questions from anybody, give me a call. And alternatively, when you've got another board meeting and you're going to have more people come along, or you want some follow-up answers, I'm more than happy to make myself available as well.
Terrific. So I'll sit still now. Gary, you're there. Do you want to answer a few questions, Gary? Or?
I got a heap. And in part, apologies because I really haven't had time to get onto the training stuff and so forth. But my questions are fairly generic, and it's really about the nature of this beast and what the expectations are of it in terms of functionality, of us using it, of it being able to update across the country, which I think is a feature we obviously sought with Sporty HQ and got. So I'll rattle off a few questions and you can talk when I'm done. I obviously have an interest in where in whether conversations are happening with AMSA in a realistic way, because my own view is that if the package will do everything that we need it to do, I don't want to be running a parallel universe in Masters. That's a discussion for Peter Wright and Gary Irwin and the people I'm sure you're aware of. the other one is you were talking about sort of 24, 36-hour turnarounds, this sort of thing. We have, and there are a number of packages for running tournaments in various formats and ways, and it would be nice if within this particular tool you could sit down, enter your tournament into the system and run your tournament live with your data entry being once and once only. In other words, you run your competition, you enter your scores, you get all your next matches and running sheets and everything out of the system, and bingo, when you get to the end of the tournament, you don't have to then come back to something and re-enter all those scores. That's my ideal universe. I don't know where you're at in relation to that sort of thing. As far as running pennants and such like, again, we run a Masters pennant at Eastside. We enter those results into Sporty HQ. Sporty HQ effectively gives us nothing back because we can't tune it to run the pennant the way we want to. And so we're really feeding Sporty HQ to maintain the information about players, ratings, relativity and so forth. However, again, as you're probably aware, there is a parallel universe within AMSA where Masters results need to go to Gary Irwin to be entered into the information that he has, and he maintains a separate Masters set of rankings. God bless him, he's done it for years. It works, it's nice, but I'd throw it over my left shoulder tomorrow if I thought we could bring all this shit together and have it all happening in the one planet. Not for anything that Gary's stuff doesn't work or that it's not good or that he doesn't do a great job, but it sits out there and there's no way I can see that it's going to sort of integrate with anything in any meaningful way. So that's where I'd like to be going. And yeah, they're the sorts of things that are exercising my mind. I won't describe the point I went to get to because you've probably been describing it to everyone yourself for the last year. But it's that sort of thing I'm seeking to have as an outcome from all of this. And well, as I said, it doesn't sound like you've got much of a conversation with Masters yet. And I don't know in terms of the other state squash bodies and their various clubs and so on, which are an order of magnitude bigger than anything I have to deal with, where that's going with them as well. I can see the Squash Australia high-level vision. I've just been involved with my tennis club in Tennis Australia doing the similar nationwide, hey, everybody register yourself once, bang, paid, money dispersed back down the chain instead of up the chain, blah, blah, blah. Love all that. And they're the things that I'm interested in.
Yeah. So,
fundamentally, revSPORT is being introduced to become that single source of truth for everything squash in Australia. And with that in mind, what we're doing is reaching out to every stakeholder that we have here, which includes Masters.
Yep.
To ensure that when anybody registers as a squash player at any level at any time is part of that network of squash players and that squash community.
Yep.
It does allow the flexibility for people to be members of multiple clubs. It does allow an easy transition from one state to another. It does allow Squash Tasmania to be able to update member information for any club or association within Tasmania, if a secretary is sick or hit by a bus or anything like that. As you said before, the distribution of payments, it provides some clarity so that people can really see what goes to Squash Australia, what goes to Squash Tasmania, and what goes through the clubs. With regards to the competitions and tournaments, we're in a really favourable position in that as you would have noticed that as we've launched and started rolling out revSPORT, there's no competition features available at the moment.
Yep.
And that's because we're working with them. So every 2 weeks I have a sprint meeting with them. They're building that for us. So it's a bespoke built for squash system, and for the most part, Tamika is involved in that and driving that as our national competitions and events lead. So if anyone has an intimate understanding of the needs of competitions and tournaments, it's Tamika, and also Leanna. So it's ensuring that, like you said, in competitions we have live scoring. So you don't have to have scorecards and then the tournament organizer needs to sit down at the end of the day and enter 20 match scores. It's done. It's there. It's in your mobile phone. It's on your tablet. It's on your laptop. It's on your PC, wherever you want to do that. Scores and results are available to be viewed live. Your fixtures can be done, any type of fixturing that you would like to have. And that includes your pennant competition that goes for weeks, months, whatever that might be. So one of the biggest advantages for us, I think, in this competition feature is, unlike Sporty HQ, which, for all its faults, isn't a horrible system, we're just migrating to something that we can make sure we have built bespoke for our needs, and also does probably a better job in providing flexibility in membership management, finance management, website management, and things like that. The ratings and rankings, one of the things that we've been cognizant of is, now that we're leaving Sporty HQ, the information we get out of Sporty HQ doesn't talk to any other system. So, essentially we either have to stay with Sporty HQ forever, or we need to migrate into an environment that allows us the flexibility to make adjustments when we need to. So in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, we decide that revSPORT isn't the right fit for us and we want to move to Club Locker or something like that. We haven't housed all of our information necessarily in revSPORT. Competition and tournament information, competition history and things like that, that's actually all going to be housed in squash levels. So one of the agitations from a lot of people is, well, what happens to my match history? Where's my tournament history going to be? Well, if we pick up and leave revSPORT in 10 years' time and go and plug in somewhere else, we just plug squash levels straight back in, and all of that history is right there. It's available for them at any time, at any place. Around the ratings and rankings and hearing how Masters does it, I couldn't, just listening to you explain it just makes me want to run for the hills. So if that's all managed through squash levels, things like, if you have a look, and we just had this conversation today, on the Squash Australia website, the rankings only really caters for juniors. So we'll actually have available multiple demographics. So it might be, seniors, and then, the 19s, 17s, 18s, 13s. But if we do manage to get Masters on board, it will include a Masters category where people can see
I don't want to misrepresent the state of play in Masters. It is very well organised across the country. The information is historically quite rich, and it's a good workable system. And I couldn't imagine, in essence, that with the right sort of cooperation, moving that information across to another system would be that fraught. And you've got the obvious situation where most probably Masters members are also involved in other club pennants and other tournaments and all sorts of other stuff, which doesn't necessarily find its way back into the Masters rankings. I mean, in particular, if I play a junior, then clearly there's nothing to be entered into Masters rankings because it isn't a Masters match. And so if all that sort of could come together, and Sporty HQ doesn't do a bad job of sort of bringing that stuff together, that would be brilliant.
Yep, absolutely. And those are the conversations I'm hoping to have with Peter and Michelle. If you can maybe tap them on the shoulder and prompt them, I'm happy to keep emailing and reaching out. Because, like you said, if we can get Masters into the system and their competence, all Masters competitions and tournaments into the revSPORT environment, then when Masters plays Masters, it gets recorded and it has an impact. Whereas when Masters plays an under-17, the score's just recorded in whatever that tournament or match might be, and it doesn't necessarily have an impact on ratings and rankings. So, absolutely, that environment is absolutely fluid and is very scalable to be able to cater to that. But for that to happen, I guess we probably need to just get those discussions happening. And I'm more than happy to If masters are reserved in coming on board, then that's fine. I'm happy to work on a staged transition or incorporating something that we can do.
All right, I'll say one more thing, and then in deference to Leon's opening remarks, I'll shut up. There was at an AGM I don't know, 3-4 years ago, whatever it was, a discussion around Sporty HQ and the Masters system happened, and a motion was put to say that basically Masters would take account of, and the wording of the motion that was put was the Sporty HQ system, and I sort of put my hand up and said, no, don't talk about Sporty HQ, talk about the Squash Australia. I can't remember exact wordings, but basically there's whatever system Squash Australia use. So don't mention a product, don't mention a system, just talk about whatever Squash Australia use. Masters will take those rankings into account. Now, that's partly gives some leverage to say, well, we've had part of that discussion. We don't have to sort of change our constitution, thank Christ, to do something along those lines. So there's sort of there's an acknowledgement that this should be taken into account, that the external competition stuff can be brought into the discussions around rankings for the national competitions. I guess the question becomes, okay, if I play one of these bloody 17-year-old kids who run around between my legs and up my back and insist on playing in a most unfair manner, should my Masters ranking adjust according to that? So, or should a Masters ranking be Masters to Masters and nothing else? I happen to think the former should apply. You play whomever you play and your ranking adjusts accordingly. That may be an area where you'll get some kickback. I don't know. But anyway, so and now, Leon, I'll shut up.
Gavin,
allows flexibility in that. So
welcome to the meeting, Gavin. I don't think we've had the pleasure of meeting you. If you'd like to give us a quick rundown on your background, and then if you've got any questions, over to you.
Well, my involvement in squash is pretty much just as an amateur player. I do a bit of admin help for the Kingborough Club.
Oh, Kingborough, right, okay.
So I'm a colleague of Kent's.
Okay.
And Kent invited me to this, one, A, because I'm helping out a bit, and B, because I do have an IT background.
Yeah. Sean, if I could just break in, you said you're having fortnightly meetings developing this product. What's your timeline on that?
this is to have the competition's features and functionality ready for that sort of end of March, start of April switch on. So
okay.
when we switch on, we want to have the competition's features available. That's not set in stone, because what we want to make sure we do is probably do some user testing first. So we might tap some clubs on the shoulder and say, hey, we've built it. Can you run a few test tournaments? Or you've got an open tournament on the weekend. Can you use it and give us some feedback? And then if there's anything that needs to be fixed, we can throw back. That March, April is the deadline. Well, is the optimistic deadline. Realistically, once we get to that end of June period, everything should be up and running and fully functional.
Yeah. Has the take up from all the states been on the same level of interest, or have you had some resistance?
All of the states and territories are on board. So this is before we even entered into this process. When we went into the RP, the request for tenders, all of the states were advised that we'd be going through this process, and that started at the beginning of 2021. So we've got all the states on board, and all of the clubs are progressively getting on board as well. It's a lot easier to sort of sit down and educate 8 state and territory presidents or administrators versus trying to get out to close to 400 clubs. So the club uptake is a little bit slower, but I think that's just indicative of a greater need for comms and education.
Shane, just a quick question. As we all know, not all, but the majority of squash players are lazy, and you have to tag them down with a chain to try and get them to pay their registration fees, etc., and to get them to enter their own information details, and how will this system handle if, say for sake of argument, for instance, Leon Barnett doesn't enter his information and doesn't pay his membership fee, registration fee? What happens to Leon Barnett, and what happens to the club that Leon Barnett plays for?
Leon Barnett needs a boot up the backside.
Yeah, apart from that, yeah.
Ideally, we'll have every member enter and set up their own profile within the system. And we're doing that for a couple of reasons. One, when Sporty HQ was set up, multiple fields were not mandatory. So first name, last name were mandatory, date of birth was not mandatory, gender was not mandatory, phone number and email address was not mandatory. So if we were to pull out of Sporty HQ and plug into revSPORT, we are essentially setting ourselves up for failure again. So we can understand that there's a little bit of frustration around why we're asking members to do that. But there are so many gaps in the data that we have, and there's also so many duplications. There could be 6 Leon Barnetts in the Sporty HQ system, all with one time when Leon entered his email address, he put .com, and then the next time he put .con, and those kind of errors. So as we move over to Rev, we're going to ask Leon to set up his own account. If he has trouble with that, and we completely understand, all respect, a lot of the older generation sometimes do have some struggles with understanding the technology and the environment in that space.
Settle down. Look at your screens. Careful what you're saying there.
You guys all get it, right? You guys all get it. Those much, much older members.
I've got news for you, Shane. I fall in that category, which you've just described.
Club administrators are also able to input data if necessary. But again, noting that if we were to ask club administrators to import, whether it's 40 members or 200 members, inevitably somewhere in there, through fatigue, through distraction, they're going to put some details in wrong. Whereas if each individual member enters their own specific details, they're less inclined to make an error in that space. So to summarise it in your response to your question, Leon, we're going to hound Leon to set up his own profile. However, if he doesn't and it needs to be done, a club administrator can, a state administrator can, or you can pick up the phone to me and say, with an email, and say, hey, here's the details. Can you get this guy into whatever that club might be?
So on the same track, if I then said to my members, this is what you've got to do, that's one approach, and then I've got to start harassing and chasing and all the stuff. And don't have a particular problem with that. I mean, we gather this information regardless. At some point, we need this information, and they need to provide it to us. However, we and probably everyone else around this and many other tables would have what you would hope would be a fairly comprehensive database with all that information on it. So if I was to sort of turn the thing slightly around and say to my members, we are going to do a bulk load of membership information into this system that will generate you an account, a password, blah, blah, blah. Now it's up to you to get in there, given that information is now there, and look at it and change anything that needs changing that we may have wrong in our database, and do your registration, payments, etc. processes through that. So just take all that initial stuff and put it in there, and then say, hey, guess what, guys? It's all there. Now get in and use it.
Same problem.
Yeah,
Well,
we had this discussion. With
I think the gatekeeper concept should apply. So you get as many people to do it as who are happy to do it. You need someone to vet it to make sure it's correct. .cons or .com, whatever. And if there's stuff missing, the gatekeeper has to go to that person and extract the information from them and enter it.
Yeah.
I think there's some. Anyway, look, I think there's some discussion needs to happen around that, because in essence, we, I'll say we masters in Tasmania already go through all of that stuff, right? So the information we have is robust. It's pretty complete. To then sort of go around the other way and say to everyone, okay, you get on this system, you put in the information as you see yourself, and we will then vet it if we start to have problems. Just strikes me as throwing away a whole lot of stuff that's already been done.
Oh yeah, no, I wasn't suggesting dispersing with your current database, but it's probably horses for courses. If you've got a good sound set of records and you can import them, that's great.
Yeah.
I don't think they're mutually exclusive, those approaches.
Well, okay, so we're agreed.
Yeah. Shane, I know we can't see where you are, and you could be anywhere. Have you got anything that's concerning your club or yourself, or anything that you'd like to ask, Shane?
No, to be honest, I haven't looked at the training either so far. Reason being, only the last few weeks I've been getting emails off you, Leon, because I think you reached out to get my email address, and I haven't got access to our club emails. Our previous secretary does, so we're just trying to rectify that now. I have a question which you probably answered there before. So we still go by the paper score sheets and that. So again, I haven't done the training or anything. So if we got the iPads and did the live scoring that way, that'll update straight away. Is that how it works? Sorry, I haven't done the training. I'm not familiar with it, or I haven't even entered Sporting HQ, so I haven't done that sort of stuff. So
yeah, absolutely. It'll enter live, so you can sit there using a tablet. You can use your phone, set a laptop on your lap, or alternatively, if you are somewhere where perhaps there's no Wi-Fi and there's no 4 or 5G or anything like that, you can use your scorecards, and your tournament administrator can sit down at the end of the night and enter all of the scores all at once. So it really just comes down to the nature of the tournament and the location.
Yeah, no, because we have been having discussions about getting iPads, because a lot of the guys now use their phones to do the live scoring and all that sort of stuff. So we have been talking about that.
Does anybody know the cost of an iPad that is capable of doing this off the top of your head?
What, sorry?
Does anybody know the cost of an iPad that's capable of doing this?
No, sorry, I can't help you there.
No.
A couple of $100.
Yeah,
a couple of $100.
I know Devonport Council have grants available to clubs to purchase equipment that's going to help them with their basically running of operations and stuff. So it was just a question. Okay, so I think Deloraine have got iPads, and now what the current iPads that they've got, I'm assuming, will be sufficient to carry on with the new system. Is that right, Sean?
Correct.
Yeah. Ken, questions?
Also, I have another question. Sorry.
Sorry, Sean.
Because I played at Ulverston the other night, their first round, and it was mentioned, I don't know if this is the right forum or not, that memberships is scrapped for the time being. Is that right? Pennant fees are still going, but memberships are scrapped. I hadn't heard that. For squash, is that through Squash Tas, or is that something?
Well, we haven't scrapped anything at the present moment, Shane. And
we hadn't either a penguin, and I got told that. I'm thinking,
Squash Tasmania certainly haven't had a meeting to scrap any membership. So unless you hear from Squash Tasmania or Squash Australia, then it's as is or as was.
That's right. Pam Bailey wanted me to ask the question. So I said I will, but because I hadn't heard anything and it was news to me. So that's good. Thank you for clarifying. I'll let her know.
Yeah, thanks, Shane.
The messaging from us will be...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, if I could just go a little bit further on Shane is, whilst we're in this process of migrating and we're about to enter that point where we're asking members to register with Squash Australia through the revSPORT portal, there'll be no membership fee to do that. So basically, we'll be going into revSPORT, setting up their accounts at no cost. So there'll be a $0 membership fee to get that started. So I don't know if perhaps that's some of the rhetoric that's been discussed. And the reason we're doing that is basically because everybody's membership is still currently managed through Sporty HQ until we flick that switch over. So getting on board in revSPORT is at absolutely no cost until that census date, and then membership fees will be due.
No, perfect. Thank you.
Kent, anything you want to ask?
That might be a good incentive to get people to sign up quickly. There's no charge. We can fool them. No, look, I think it'll be okay. The older generation will struggle a bit, but the younger generation will just be all over this quickly. And I guess on a club night, our club's starting our next pennant next Tuesday, Gavin, that we can actually get people to do it there on the night and sort of help them through the process when the time's right. So might be a good thing to do when the club's starting its pennant, that on that first pennant night we encourage members to sign up that night, and we'll get through quite a bit of it then, I would hope.
Yeah.
It is a good segue for me, Ken. I'm working with revSPORT at the moment in planning some face-to-face training sessions. So as you would know, we've done 3 rounds of 3 training sessions from late last year to the last one finished just last night. The team at revSPORT will be travelling to all likely capital cities and doing some face-to-face training sessions for club administrators. So what I suggested to revSPORT was, and no guarantees that it will happen, is if there are any events that will bring majority of your clubs and club administrators together in one location, that would probably be the best time to try and get them to come down. I think with Tasmania, whether it's going to Hobart or whether it's going to Devo or Lonnie, is much of a muchness because you can still fly in from anywhere. So it might be worth giving that some thought. And ideally, I think it's sort of in that March, April, May window. If you've got a couple of dates, please feel free to shoot them through to me. Again, no guarantee that the Rev team will be able to deliver on those dates, getting around to all 8 states and territories, but it certainly helps give an idea of trying to make it a little bit less laborious for those administrators.
Okay.
We could perhaps run a forum, Leon, up in Devonport or somewhere.
Look, I think that it's a great idea, and I think possibly the middle of Tassie, Launceston is probably an ideal spot. That gives easy access for the northwest and easy access for the southern people as well. Yep. So that's certainly something that we need to talk about, and also approach our club, our member clubs to get their feedback on it too.
So it's only a day's session, isn't it, Sean?
It would even only be a couple of hours, and this training would be as simple as logging into your portal and setting up those first things, setting up your payment classes, setting up your website, and going into your competitions, features, and things like that. Just giving those administrators the confidence to set that base level. And while we're not necessarily switching over live until the end of June, it means they can go in there and they can tinker around and they can break the system if they, through experimentation, because we can just reset everything and have it ready to go. So it's just, get them in there, get them used to the system, get them making some mistakes, because we can fix anything between now and the 30th of June.
Yep.
One final question from me, Sean, is Squash Tasmania. We appointed David Mulcahy to be the Tasmanian administrator.
Mm-hmm.
What will his role be for all our affiliated clubs?
So fundamentally, right now, and I'm just pausing because I'm sitting inside Squash Tasmania's account as we speak, and I just have a look. At the moment, he is the administrator. He's the sole administrator for Squash Tasmania. So essentially, anything that needs doing in the Squash Tasmania portal or account, David's the only person that can manage that. My recommendation is to have at least 2 people because, I'm always the safety. So if something happens to David and you need to get in, you can just call me and I can set you up, or if you eventually get a staff member. But fundamentally, for clubs, if there is any technical issues with the platform, there's a ticketing system straight through to revSPORT, and it's an 8-hour maximum turnaround on support. But if it's a squash-related issue around setting fees or entering a member or something like that, and the club administrator can't do it, at the first instance, it would be David. And then if he was unavailable, at the moment, it's me. So ideally, someone else from Tassie would be in there who can take care of it. If you've got someone that's great with websites, maybe you can have them as an admin who can look after the website. If you've got a treasurer, they can manage the finances, things like that.
We have Squash Tasmania has its AGM a couple of weeks' time, I think, isn't it, Kent?
Yeah.
Which that'll be an agenda item, and we'll probably look at appointing. We need a backup anyway for David, and it's always good. So we need to have somebody that's also, I guess, IT familiar with how to turn a computer on and turn a computer off, so to speak. So I think we'll discuss that at the AGM, Kent, and CK. Somebody to take it on board.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Please.
Yes, Callum.
Sean, you said March, April. Before then, is there anything we can look at or to get a feel for what's going on with the actual system?
We're trying to get clubs set up now. So we've got about 70 clubs who have access to their portals as we speak. Right. One challenge that we're having at the moment is in order to set up the portals, and let me just bump over to have a look at your dashboard. So how many? One, just the one. Okay, so what I can see is that there is 12 portals pending setup, and that's a variety of things. So right now, it looks like East Side is the only one that's up and ready to go. What we need from the others are some simple things. Obviously, we need to set an administrator initially. So first name, last name, date of birth, and an email address. Once we have that, we're then able to connect that portal or that club. So is it Dale? Dale has just emailed me her information for Wynyard. So we'll connect her with the squash club as the administrator. She will then get an email that says, yep, you're the administrator. Here's the password. Here's the username. Get in and get going. So for Deloraine, Devonport Racquetball Club, Devonport Squash Club, Kingborough.
Yep, that's where Gav's from.
Oh, brilliant. There you go.
So Gav's your man?
Newstead, Parsons, Penguin, Tasmanian Masters, Ulverston, University Gym in Hobart and Wynyard. So all we need is just the administrator's first, last name and date of birth to start, and email address, and then we can get those portals set up. And once it's set up, those administrators can then go and add other administrators to their club and start going about telling everybody, hey, it's time to register on revSPORT, follow this link, set yourself up, and you're good to go.
The clubs that you mentioned, the administrators, do the clubs that they're part of have to be affiliated to Squash Tasmania and Squash Australia?
In order to have full access to all of the functionality, yes.
Because you mentioned a couple there that are not affiliated.
What we're able to do is if they're not affiliated, we pull away access to a lot of the features. So they won't be able to run competitions and tournaments. I'm not too sure about websites, but essentially the reason we're allowing unaffiliated clubs and centres into the system is because, one, we want them to see that Squash Australia affiliation, there's a value add in what you can do. So by becoming an affiliate member, you can run your competitions in-house through this system. You'll be able to have access to an out-of-the-box website. You can run your finances and things like that. I think for the most part, all that they would be able to do is just have a member database. And that's win-win for us because it means whilst they're not necessarily affiliated to Squash Australia through Squash Tasmania, if they have 50 members, those 50 people are still in our system. They're still in our environment. We're able to talk to them and connect with them. So I can understand sometimes there's that sensitivity around, oh, you're not affiliated, we don't want them. But at the same time, they're not affiliated. We do want them because we want to be able to turn around and say, hey, you've only got the tip of the iceberg and what we can do for you. Pay your affiliation to Squash Tasmania, and this is everything that we can do for you.
Terrific, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so basically in a nutshell, Shane, at the present moment, you've got an administrator from Wynyard.
Yep.
And an administrator from Eastside.
Would that be David? Must be David, Sean, is it? Is that David?
Yeah, I would say
Australia Priest. Who is it?
Takes my computer a little bit when I'm in a Teams. Eastside. It takes my computer a little bit of time. I'm going to have to get back to you on that one because
it
when I'm in a Teams, my computer doesn't work.
It would be David. So in other words, the other clubs, Devonport, Kingborough, Penguin, Ulverston, and I'm assuming the Masters too, Gary, will need to appoint administrator and then send that information through to you. Is that right, Sean?
Correct. Yes. So what I can do, Leon, is I can just send you a spreadsheet.
If you wouldn't mind, I would appreciate that.
Information.
Yeah.
And then if you could just punch that in. Usually the hardest thing to get back is the date of birth. First name, last name, email address, everyone's fine to throw out.
Yeah.
And to be very, very clear that once that information comes to us, it goes into the system, and then it's in terms of secure storage. revSPORT has all of that covered. So we've distributed, and on our revSPORT project page, we've posted the privacy and data protection policy. So you'll be able to see, what measures are being taken to protect everyone's information.
Yeah.
We will never share anybody's information with any third parties unless legally required to do so. So any information that we have stays with us. We will never share information from Squash New South Wales with Squash Tasmania, and conversely, we will never share Squash Tasmania information with any other states. So it's all very secure, and we've got those policies in place and infrastructure in place to make sure it's all securely stored.
Okay. Look, I'll shoot an email out to all the clubs we have on our books in Tasmania come on Monday and advise them that to appoint administrator. Some clubs may be having their AGMs very shortly. I know Devonport have got their AGM next Tuesday, and if there's any changes in their committee, well, that's when it'll be decided. So I'll advise all our club members all our clubs to advise you of or to appoint somebody that's going to be their administrator, Sean.
Yeah, and most will already have that because they're using Sporting HQ anyway. So whoever's doing it in Sporting HQ will be most likely.
Probably, yeah. So without too much more ado, if anybody hasn't got any more questions,
I do.
Gary does. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. A couple of things. Launceston. Just as a parochial sort of question, do you have contact with clubs or squash centres in Launceston? They've tended to be sort of out there doing their own thing. It's quite an active squash community there, but their association with both Squash Tasmania and Squash Australia has been a tenuous and interesting sort of saga. Are you in contact with people in Launceston?
No, look, if they're not in our system, I have not had any contact with any of them. And I'm mindful that I've only been on board for just over 16 months. But as I've sort of said, and Rob, our CEO, has been in for 2 years.
Okay.
So where people have challenges and issues with Squash Australia, I can certainly appreciate.
Okay.
But,
so very briefly for the rest of the people here, Leon, I don't want to throw that particular issue to Squash Australia per se, because they're sort of a bit too helicopter to be dealing with it. But do we need to be making some overtures to whomever? I know Ian Graham and a few other people certainly that Masters deal with are very good in terms of assisting with us and in engaging people in our tournaments, all that sort of stuff. But what's your view of the community of squash clubs and players there in relation to all of this?
Newstead were affiliated to Tasmania, Squash Tasmania, and they pulled away from Squash Tasmania last year.
Right.
Yeah.
They're basically it's basically run by a tennis club. So I've got a feeling that they've all gone back across to the tennis section.
Yep.
Theogenes, well, they've always been a bit of a rebel group that call themselves the Boozers.
Yep.
But having said that, it has a new person or a new company or a new group that's taken over the lease of that section.
Yep.
And it's on my list of jobs to do to contact that particular person in terms of getting them into the fold.
Yep. Okay. Fine. I just wanted to mention that one because it hadn't sort of come into the discussion, and it's something. It would be nice if this gives us an opportunity to engage with them again in a meaningful way. That's cool. And this is a broader question, and maybe one, Sean, that you and I could discuss offline at some stage, and that is the question around what other state masters bodies, where they are at in relation with this, what discussions you may or may not have had with them. But I don't want to burden the rest of the meeting with that. But I'd certainly be interested to know across the Masters spectrum with whom and you're having discussions and how they're going and where it's all headed, because obviously from our perspective we're going to have to align all this with the rest of the Masters world as well.
I mean, I can answer that now, Gary, quite simply is none.
Right.
And it's in part, there's just that level of complexity, and some Masters associations are affiliated to the state bodies, and some Masters sit outside the state bodies. So for the most part, the reason I haven't reached out to the state Masters bodies is because I'd like to reach out to Australian Masters and actually have a discussion around, to be honest, I was quite surprised to see Tasmanian Masters in the list, because my understanding was that they would affiliate to Australian Masters and
well, we do. We're running this, but we're Tasmanians. We have two heads. We can manage it.
Double the intelligence.
It's all good.
Don't get carried away, Gary.
Sean, do you have on your books? Do you have Scottsdale and Longford squash clubs on your list?
No, I don't. But certainly if they need to be, again, that spreadsheet that I send out, just add them and we can go about getting them onboarded. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, guys?
Nope.
No, we're going to sign out in 5 minutes anyway, so we.
I want to thank you all for attending, especially Sean as well for giving us a bit of an insight on what has to be done and what to expect. Shane, nice to meet you online.
Yes,
And hopefully, if you've got anything that you need to ask regarding Squash Tasmania or anything, you've got my number now anyway, haven't you, Shane?
Yep, I do, yes.
Yeah, and thank you all for attending and have a good weekend.
Yep, thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Sean.
Bye.
Full sign out.
I'm trying to.